For 10,000 years, the dust of history has settled over the greatest mysteries of our species. We have been told that civilization began in Sumer, yet the stones of our ancestors whisper a different, more terrifying truth. What if the maps we use are missing the most important locations on Earth? Tonight, we peel back the layers of the Sahara, descend into the depths of Anatolia, and confront the ghost of a drowned empire. This isn't just history, it's a recovery mission for the human soul. Deep within the Adrar Plateau of Mauritania lies a geological anomaly so massive it can only be truly appreciated from the cold vacuum of space. Known as the Richat structure, or more evocatively, the Eye of the Sahara, this series of concentric rings spans nearly 25 miles across. For decades, geologists dismissed it as a simple impact crater or a volcanic dome, but the more we look, the more the coincidences pile up like desert dunes. Plato, the Athenian philosopher, described Atlantis as a city of concentric rings, 3 of water, 2 of land, measuring 127 stadia. When you convert those ancient units, the measurements of the Eye of the Sahara are nearly identical. But how could a city once surrounded by water now sit in the middle of a parched, desolate wasteland? The answer lies in the shifting sands of time. Thousands of years ago, the Sahara was not a desert, it was the Green Sahara, a lush landscape of rivers, megalakes, and teeming wildlife. Satellite imagery reveals ancient riverbeds, the Tamanrasset River system, that once flowed right past the Richat structure toward the Atlantic Ocean. If Atlantis was here, it wasn't just a maritime power, it was the gateway to a continent. Skeptics point to the lack of marble and monumental architecture, but they forget that the Sahara is one of the most abrasive environments on Earth. Thousands of years of sandblasting and flash flooding would erase any trace of a civilization that didn't build with the permanence of the pyramids. Yet, explorers in the region have found thousands of Acheulean artifacts, hand axes and tools scattered across the rings. We are looking at a site that matches the size, the shape, the location, and the geological history of the world's most famous lost city. If the Eye of the Sahara is the ghost of Atlantis, then the history books aren't just incomplete, they are fundamentally wrong. We are standing at the edge of a revelation that could redefine the origin of the human story. But to understand how a civilization could vanish from the surface, we must look at those who chose to survive beneath it. While the Eye of the Sahara hides in plain sight under the sun, another secret lies buried deep beneath the soft volcanic tuff of Cappadocia, Turkey. In 1963, a man knocking down a wall in his basement stumbled upon a hidden room, which led to a tunnel, which led to an entire city. This is Derinkuyu. It is a staggering feat of engineering, plunging 18 stories into the earth, capable of housing as many as 20,000 people. This wasn't a temporary cellar, this was a fully realized metropolis. It featured ventilation shafts that reached the water table, stables for livestock, wine presses, schools, and chapels. But why? Why would a massive population choose to live like moles in the dark? The traditional historical narrative suggests these were hiding places for early Christians fleeing Roman or Arab persecution. But the architecture tells a different story. The massive circular stone doors, some weighing over 1,000 pounds, could only be closed from the inside. They weren't just keeping people out, they were sealing a population in. The sheer scale of Derinkuyu, and the hundreds of other underground cities discovered in the region, suggests a global imperative. If we look at the dating of the oldest layers, we find evidence that these structures could be thousands of years older than the medieval era. Some researchers suggest they were built during the Younger Dryas, a period of extreme climatic upheaval nearly 12,000 years ago. Imagine a world where the sky turned to fire, where solar flares or cometary fragments pelted the atmosphere, making life on the surface impossible. Derinkuyu wouldn't just be a city, it would be a fallout shelter, an ancient ark designed to preserve the seed of humanity during a planetary catastrophe. The sophistication of the ventilation alone rivals modern systems, ensuring that even at the lowest depths, the air remained fresh. These people were not primitive cave dwellers, they were master engineers who understood the thermal properties of the earth. As we wander through these silent, lightless corridors, we have to ask, what did they know about the sun and the stars that we have forgotten? And is there a connection between the people who fled into the earth in Anatolia and the people who built the rings in the Sahara? To bridge the gap between the sunken rings of Atlantis and the buried cities of Turkey, we must look at the clock of the world. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth was emerging from the last ice age when something went catastrophically wrong. Temperatures plummeted, and the planet was plunged into a 1,000-year deep freeze known as the Younger Dryas. For years, this was a mystery, but the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests that a fragmented comet struck the North American ice sheet, triggering a massive release of meltwater into the Atlantic. This wouldn't have just been a flood, it would have been a global reboot. The sea levels rose by hundreds of feet in a matter of weeks. If Atlantis was a coastal or low-lying civilization like the Eye of the Sahara, it would have been obliterated by a wall of water. At the same time, the atmospheric disturbances, wildfires, blackened skies, and intense radiation would have made life on the surface a nightmare. This is the missing link. This is why we see the rise of megalithic structures like Göbekli Tepe in the same region as Derinkuyu immediately following this period. It's as if a surviving remnant of a highly advanced culture emerged from their shelters to restart civilization. They didn't just build temples, they encoded astronomical data into the stones. The vulture stone at Göbekli Tepe appears to depict a cometary impact, a date stamp in the stars for when the world ended. But connections are too numerous to ignore. We see the same architectural motifs, the T-shaped pillars, the precision stonework, the obsession with the stars appearing simultaneously across the globe. From the pyramids of Giza to the temples of Tiahuanaco, the survivors were leaving a message. They were obsessed with time because they had seen time run out. They were obsessed with the sky because that is where the destruction came from. When Plato spoke of Atlantis being destroyed in its single day and night of misfortune, he wasn't telling a myth, he was relaying a traumatic historical memory of the Younger Dryas. The Eye of the Sahara stands as a monument to what was lost to the water, while Derinkuyu stands as a testament to what survived in the rock. If a global cataclysm wiped out the centers of power, what happened to the survivors? In the centuries that followed, the Mediterranean was haunted by a mysterious group known only as the Sea People. They appeared from nowhere, technologically superior, wielding bronze weapons and naval tactics that crushed the established empires of the Bronze Age. Ramses III of Egypt recorded his desperate battles against them, describing them as coming from the islands in the midst of the sea. Could these sea people be the nomadic descendants of the Atlantean diaspora? The Egyptian priests at Sais told Solon that Atlantis was the source of their own civilization's secret knowledge. This suggests that Egypt wasn't the beginning, but a legacy project, a backup drive of Atlantean wisdom. Look at the Great Sphinx. Geologists like Robert Schoch have argued that the weathering patterns on the Sphinx are not from wind and sand, but from heavy, prolonged rainfall that hasn't occurred in Egypt for at least 10,000 years. This pushes the origins of the Giza Plateau back to the same era as the Richat structure and the Younger Dryas. There is a thread of high technology that runs through this era, the ability to move 100-ton blocks, the knowledge of precession of the equinoxes, and the mastery of hydraulic engineering. We find these fingerprints everywhere. In the King's List of ancient Sumer and Egypt, we see reigns of gods that lasted tens of thousands of years before the deluge. We usually dismiss these as legends, but what if they represent the long, stable duration of the Atlantean era? The survivors didn't just bring tools, they brought a blueprint for society. They taught agriculture, law, and mathematics to the hunter-gatherers they encountered. This explains the sudden appearance of civilization in the historical record. It wasn't a slow climb from the mud, it was a gift from the ghosts of a drowned world. But where did they go? Did they simply blend in, or did they leap behind a final, hidden repository of their greatest secrets, waiting for a generation that could finally decode them? The more we study the locations of these ancient sites, the more we realize they are not placed randomly. There is a geometry of the gods that connects the Eye of the Sahara, the Giza pyramids, and the ruins of the Americas. If you draw a line from the Richat structure through the Great Pyramid, it leads directly to the mouth of the Ganges. This is known as the Great Circle of Ancient Sites. It suggests a global surveying capability that predates our modern history by millennia. How could a primitive people know the exact dimensions of the Earth? The Great Pyramid itself is a scale model of the Northern Hemisphere at a ratio of 1 to 43,200. This number isn't random, it's linked to the Earth's precession. These ancient architects were obsessed with the number 72, the number of years it takes for the stars to shift 1 degree in the sky. We find this number in the myths of the Norse, the Maya, the Egyptians, and the Hindus. This is a universal language, a mathematical message in a bottle left for us to find. They were telling us that they knew the shape of the world, and they knew how it would end. This brings us back to the Eye of the Sahara. If the Richat structure was the capital, it was the prime meridian of a lost age. The wealth described by Plato, the orichalcum that glowed like fire, the abundance of elephants, the intricate canal systems suggests a culture that had mastered its environment. But the very environment they mastered was their undoing. The tilting of the Earth's axis, the shifting of the monsoons, and the sudden impact of the Younger Dryas turned their paradise into a salt-encrusted ring. Today, the Eye of the Sahara is littered with seashells and whale fossils, high above sea level, proving that this land was once the bottom of the ocean. The Earth breathes, it shifts, and it hides its tracks. But the geometry remains. The layout of these cities was a mirror of the heavens, a way to anchor the fleeting human experience to the eternal cycles of the stars. But even the stars change. And as we look at the final piece of the puzzle, we realize the secret isn't just about where they were, but what they were warning us about. We have looked at the rings in the sand and the cities in the stone, but the map of the lost world is still unfinished. There is a final secret that ties Atlantis and Derinkuyu together, and it leads us to the most forbidden place on Earth. The Piri Reis Map, a 16th century document, shows the coast of Antarctica without ice, detailing mountains and rivers that have been buried under miles of frozen wasteland for at least 6,000 years. This implies that someone was mapping the world during the same window of time when the Eye of the Sahara was green and the people of Turkey were digging their shelters. We are looking at a global civilization, a maritime empire that spanned from the coast of Africa to the mountains of Anatolia and beyond. The Lost Worlds are not separate stories, they are the shattered remains of a single, unified human era that was reset by fire and water. As we stand in the silent tunnels of Derinkuyu or fly over the massive rings of the Richat, we are looking at our own potential future. The survivors of the last cataclysm left us the clues, the geometry, the stone cities, and the warnings in the stars. They wanted us to know that we are a species with amnesia. We have forgotten our own greatness, and we have forgotten the fragility of our planet. But the amnesia is lifting. With every satellite scan and every archaeological discovery, we are reclaiming our heritage. The Eye of the Sahara is calling out to be excavated. The lower levels of Derinkuyu remain unexplored. What lies in the dark? What scrolls, what technologies, what truths are waiting for the light? The journey doesn't end here. The evidence we have uncovered in the Sahara and Turkey is just the beginning. There is one more location, a place the ancients called the Land of the Ancestors, hidden in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, where the same concentric circles have recently been spotted from the air. But that is a journey for next time. The map is open. The question is, are we brave enough to follow it to the end? The echoes of the past are growing louder. From the rings of the Sahara to the depths of Turkey, the message is clear: we are not the first, and we are not alone in our struggle against time. The truth is rising. Subscribe and hit the bell, don't let the history books keep you in the dark. This was the final chapter of our journey into the Lost Worlds. Thank you for watching.